Alexander Pope, a forgotten genius, was a child prodigy akin to Mozart. Pope's life and work is concerned with modern issues, with feminism, friendship, freedom of speech, our relationship with the environment, and what it means to be a moral citizen. In this film, we will paint a portrait of Alexander Pope using his own words to celebrate his astonishing life and great works.
Why did I write? What sin to me unknown dipped me in ink? My parents or my own?
It was a shock, absolute shock to see he's second only to Shakespeare in the Oxford Book of Quotations. Shakespeare, Pope, and then Palin.
Fools rush in where angels fear to tread, and so I come to you, my love, my heart above my head. Though I see the danger there, if there's a chance.
To her is human, to forgive divine. Pope had all the qualities that constitute genius. He had invention, he had imagination, and he had judgment. He had colours of language always before him, ready to decorate with every grace of elegant expression, with sound as well as meaning.
Pope certainly has that gift of condensing a lot of wisdom into a few memorable words, and for that reason he's one of the most quoted authors in dictionaries of quotations.
Know then thyself. Presume not God to scan. The proper study of mankind is man.
But sometimes he just condenses something into something so true and so deeply thought about that you have to think, well, that's never going to need to be said again.
His poetry is the book of life.
I entered this world in 1688 in Lombard Street in the city of London to a loving mother and an aged, gentle father.
As Catholics, Pope's family suffered from the hostility of Queen Anne's court. They could not own land or a horse or reside within 5 miles of the Protestant court. They were forced to flee to the country, to Windsor Forest. He contracted tuberculosis of the spine, Pott's disease, at an early age. This left him very short, a hunchback with a lifetime of pain, chills, and headaches. Barred from attending most schools due to his religion, he was largely self-taught, spending his time reading and exploring the countryside.
I was in every respect an outsider. I refused to let it hinder me. My Catholicism, my education, my illness, sickness and pain is the loss of one half of us. Doubt and fear the portion of the other. Did I doubt? Did I fear? I did not. I set forth my arrows.
So this kept learning fresh for him and exploited his fantastic memory and his fantastic capacity to read and think, which I think if you compare him to other poets in the English tradition, he just has a huge brain and comparable only perhaps to Milton's or Shakespeare's.
I followed everywhere where my fancy led me. I was like a boy gathering flowers in the woods and fields. I still think of those 5 or 6 years as the happiest part of my life. At the age of 12, I wrote an ode on solitude. Happy the man whose wish and care a few paternal acres bound, content to breathe his native air in his own ground.
Although the wanderer's life is idealised in the pastoral poems, Pope came to see it was not for him. He needed a house and income, and his only talent was as a poet.
We had no illusions about what the countryside smelled like. And it wasn't of interest to him that would somehow make you morally better, that for him, it's people being with people that generates culture. You can't generate it with a sheep.
The Rape of the Lock is, for many people, Pope's most enchanting poem, and it is an absolutely magical piece of work. It's inspired by a very trivial incident. I don't think there's any poem in the English language like it.
Still in constraint your suffering sex remains, or bound in formal or in real chains. Do not quit the free innocence of life for the dull glory of a virtuous wife.
Pope wrote The Rape of the Lock as a way of reconciling two Catholic families after the brutal severing of a lock of Lady Fermor's hair. The lock is lovely, irreplaceable, valueless and invaluable, a symbol of the conflicting and ambiguous feelings about women's virginity.
A rape of a lock, snipping a hair, is big, big trouble, although nothing happened, And although this seems perhaps quite 18th century and passé, I read stories all the time about girls in this day and age sexting with boys in the classroom, and the following day being totally humiliated to find the picture is all over the internet, and so to speak, all their honour in a whisper lost. The sense in which women are vulnerable both to the attraction of male attention and to the devastating implications of publicity is an ongoing issue.
Pope sympathetically understood the choices facing unmarried young women, bound by the tyrannical norms designed to bring them virgins to the altar, and after marriage, they become subject to a yet greater tyrant, their husband.
Much of the satire of the poem is lavished on a world where a single rumour can send a maiden's market price tumbling. She must withhold herself at all opportunities at which her beauty is placed on show. She must resist not only the tempter without, but the tempter within.
From Mr. Pope. Madam, it will be in vain to deny that I have some regard for this piece, since I have dedicated it to you. What dire offence from amorous causes springs? What mighty contests rise from trivial things? Since painted, or not painted, all shall fade, and she who scorns a man must die a maid. What then remains, but well our power to use, and keep good humour still, whate'er we lose?
And trust me, dear, good humour can prevail when airs and flights and screams and scolding fail. Beauties in vain their pretty eyes may roll, charms strike the sight, but merit wins the soul.
So the punchline in The Rape of the Lock is about keeping good humour. And that sounds quite mild, but actually these are very, very strong words for Pope. Good humour means a sense of proportion. It means having self-control and recognising the world for what it is and taking care of your sense of self. And smiling, as one of the voices says in The Rape of the Lock, keep good humour still, whate'er we lose. And the whate'er we lose is a double entendre, you know.
Pope identified with the famous medieval love story of Eloisa and Abelard. After their forbidden passionate love and secret marriage is discovered, Eloisa's family have Abelard castrated, and Eloisa is banished to a monastery for the rest of her life. Pope sets this story in verse, writing as though he is Eloisa.
Not grace or zeal. Love was my only call. And if I lose thy love, I lose my all.
Curse on all laws, but those which love has made. How shall I lose the sin, yet keep the sense? And love the offender, yet detest the offence?
How happy is the blameless Vestal's lot. The world forgetting, by the world forgot. Eternal sunshine of the spotless mind.
So the eternal sunshine of the spotless mind is the contrast to everything that's real. It's not actually really applauding the idea, because to have a mind that spotless, you'd have to have very little in it.
This beautiful, tragic poem also allows us to guess at the correlation between Pope's life and his poetry. It touches on longing and sexual frustration and could never have been written by someone who had not experienced it as he had. Martha Blount would be Pope's closest lifelong female companion. But as for sexual romantic relationships, Pope remained on the outside.
Madam, I am here studying 10 hours a day, but thinking of you. 'Tis thou art all my care and my delight, my daily longing and my dream by night. Good friendship is as crucial as good poetry, and as rare. A few honest people is all the world is worth. Martha Blount is one, if ever great heart deserved well. I assure you, all one's great friends and all great philosophers put together is not half as great a comfort as one good woman. I write in rhyming couplets for two reasons. Principles and maxims, so written, both strike the reader more strongly and are more easily retained. I could express myself more shortly, with force and grace.
He was never afraid of being boring in couplets, and he had such a repertoire of possibilities. It's as if he digested the whole rhyming dictionary. You get something every 2 lines with couplets.
True ease in writing comes from art, not chance, as those move easiest who have learned to dance. 'Tis not enough. No harshness gives offence. The sound must seem an echo to the sense.
Not to go back is somewhat to advance, and men must walk at least before they dance. Good boy.
I took my poems and went over them side by side with Pope's, and I was really astonished. I ought not to have been so. and mortified at the ineffable distance in point of sense, harmony, and effect, and even imagination, passion, and invention between the little Queen Anne's man and us of the Lower Empire.
A good poet adapts the very sounds as well as words to the things he treats of, so there is a style to sound. As in describing a gliding stream, the numbers should run easy and flowing. As in describing a rough torrent or deluge, sonorous and swelling, and so of the rest.
I spent the last week rereading him, and I don't, I mean, I read him so much when I was young. I don't necessarily go back that often, but oh God, they're good. They really are good, those poems.
I was in the position of having no money, not even for buying books. I believe I was paid but 13 guineas for my pastoral poems. I dreamt of building a fine house in Twickenham where my mother could live peacefully with me. I could make a garden, an English garden with parsnips, turnips, maybe melons, pineapples. But how was this to be achieved? I found a solution. I studied the trickery and cheating of the publishers and booksellers who stole my copyright and paid me nothing.
There was no real effective copyright laws, and a lot of the booksellers simply stole texts. And naturally, that meant that Pope, who I think was a very straight guy, I think he wanted things to be run honestly, and he was living in a time of great corruption and dishonesty. Very like now, really.
I saw no reason why I should not be a publisher and bookseller, and be master of my own work.
Pope became famous very young, and it was as a virtuoso of verse, really, but it was largely a sort of what we would call a succès d'estime. He embarked on a money-making project that seems to us an absolutely extraordinary thing to use to make your fortune, which was to translate the Iliad and afterwards the Odyssey. But it worked. He got a list of subscribers. He put out the translation. It had an extraordinary prestige, literary prestige, but it also got his name out into the wider world as somebody who deserved to be invested in. And after that, he was rich. He never needed to write for money ever again.
Pope's Iliad. A poetical wonder which no age or nation can pretend to equal. So sweetly moderated, it took possession of the public ear. The vulgar were enamoured by the poem, and the learned wondered at the translation.
I got place and wealth with grace, but not without obstacles. It was not clear to my detractors that I could translate the Iliad. I was attacked on the usual grounds, being an undersized Catholic mercenary who had not studied at university and knew no Greek.
At Twickenham, he was able to indulge his taste for architecture and gardening. He transformed a nondescript house into a miniature Palladian estate and acquired a 5-acre garden. Beneath the main road to London, Pope created his most famous piece of ingenuity, a grotto linking the house to the garden.
Unplaced, unpensioned, no man's heir or slave. To virtue only and her friends, a friend. He suffered coronations and royal weddings to pass without a song. And what was yet of more importance, his subjects were chosen by himself. He never exchanged praise for money.
Thanks to Homer, since I live and thrive, indebted to no prince or peer alive. I did not have to become the bard who rhymed for hire. When the Iliad ended, I was in a position to fling off lords by the dozen.
Another of Pope's passions was architecture and landscape gardening, particularly the emerging ideas rejecting formality, regimentation, and topiary. His association with the landed aristocracy led him to assist and influence the design of the gardens at Chiswick, Cirencester Park, Stowe, and Marble Hill, amongst others.
All gardening is landscape painting. Paint as you plant. I had to make 40 journeys this summer. I have been obliged to pass some days in almost every house along the Thames.
I neither would nor could show my face in that great heap of stones evermore. Mr. Pope, we thank you for the favour of your coming. I hope you and our dear friend Kent, although he's no better than a pickpocket, I pray you may counsel me on the planting of my estate here. It is upon clay and ill sod, very damp.
I would fain hope we may relieve you of your uneasy torment. May I humbly offer you pineapples from my greenhouse?
You are generous. However, we question, in your epistle to a lady, the harridan that you call Atossa. She's to represent me, is she not? Sick of herself through very selfishness, Atossa, cursed with every granted prayer, childless with all her children, wants an heir. My children's ill behaviour I cannot forgive. I've struck them from my will. Justice and kindness, that's all I ask. From loveless youth to unrespected age, no passion gratified except for rage.
Your Grace is much mistaken. It is so far from my intention. A Portuguese princess was in my mind. It often happens that those are the best people whose characters are most injured by slanderers, as we usually find that to be the sweetest fruit that the birds have been picking at. You think the same thoughts, read the same books, like the same people as I do, and yet, on my part, I hear that you say that I am a crooked, perverse little wretch at Twickenham.
I am your friend, but 'tis true I do not always flatter you. What may you expect when you write excrement in The Guardian? That we must treat dumb animals as humankind and consume nothing but turnips.
It is observable in animals that are most powerful to injure us that they never hurt us unless provoked or necessitated by hunger. Man, on the other hand, seeks out the most inoffensive animals to persecute and destroy them.
You are ridiculous.
Yet I still love your Grace. To forgive and be forgiven is the tenderest part of friendship. And none of us is without faults.
Were I young and handsome, as I was, instead of old and faded, as I am, and you could lay the empire of the world at my feet, you should never share the heart and hand that once belonged to John, Duke of Marlborough.
Histories are more full of examples of the fidelity of dogs than of friends.
He had an unusual talent for friendship, succeeding so happily over many years in binding himself to such a diversity of men and women, young and old, rich and poor, literary and otherwise.
Worthy individuals are and must be friends wherever they meet with one another, in spite of all distinctions of party or religion.
In all his intercourse with mankind, he had a great delight in artifice, and endeavoured to achieve all his purposes by indirect and unsuspected methods. He hardly drank tea without a stratagem.
Content with little I can piddle here on broccoli and muttons and round the year, but ancient friends, though poor and out of play, that touch my bell I cannot turn away. 'Tis true, no turbots dignify my boards, but gudgeons, flounders, what my Thames affords.
During this time, Pope also indulged in socialising in London. Pope often stayed with his friend Charles Jervis, who was appointed portrait painter to Queen Anne. Jervis gave Pope painting lessons with mixed results.
You may guess in how uneasy a state I am when every day the performances of others appear more beautiful and my own more despicable. I have thrown away 3 Swifts, 2 Lady Bridgewaters, a Duchess of Montague, half a dozen Earls, and a Knight of the Garter. I have crucified Christ in effigy and made the Madonna as old as her mother. So vast is art, so narrow human wit.
Another attraction was to accompany Jervis to coffee houses and meetings, including the Kit Kat Club. He befriended politicians, artists and scientists, including Isaac Newton, whose epitaph he was to write.
Nature and nature's laws lay hid in night. God said, "Let Newton be," and all was light.
Pope found himself drawn away into a new association called the Scribblerus Club. They would meet in the newly fashionable Buttons Coffee House and compose pamphlets satirising the corrupt Whig politicians. Pope's friendship with Swift was probably the deepest and most sustaining literary friendship of his life.
Nature, temper, and habit made me have but one strong desire: to fix and preserve dependable, lasting friendships.
Another member of the Scribblerus Club, John Gay, was to die young after writing The Beggar's Opera, later to be rewritten with a theme song, Mac the Knife.
Is that someone? Mac the Knife? Yes, from a tugboat by the river.
I see no sunshine but in the face of a friend. I miss our dear friend Gay every day. I've written an epitaph for him. Of manners gentle, of affection mild, in wit a man, simplicity a child, with native humour tempering virtuous rage, formed to delight at once and lash the age. but that the worthy and the good shall say, striking their pensive bosoms, here lies Gay.
A little learning is a dangerous thing. Drink deep, or taste not the Pierian spring. In 1711, he produced, at age 20, his famous essay on criticism. This displays such an extent of comprehension, such nicety of distinction, such an acquaintance with mankind, and such knowledge, both of ancient and modern learning, as are not often attained by the maturest age.
He's very thoughtful about the principles of criticism, because actually there's a huge challenge to our critical powers, which is liking things which confirm us as we are. You know, that it's natural to take to something that says you're okay and that you matter, you know. So when he's thinking about criticism, he's really thinking, how can he persuade people to try harder, to love things which they don't immediately take to, but which might be good for them, to expand themselves by exposing themselves to what's foreign, what's old, what's not obvious, what might hurt a little bit.
Good criticism, I believe, may be defined by an understanding of the work, a justness of thought, and a facility of expression.
He consulted his friends and listened with great willingness to criticism. And what was of more importance, he consulted himself and let nothing pass against his own judgment.
I faithfully assure you, I never was angry at any criticism of my poetry from whomsoever. Trust not yourself, but your defects to know. Make use of every friend and every foe.
When Pope talks about sort of good humour, and that you can express criticism and remain good-humoured, I think he's absolutely right. What Chapman and I found writing for Python was that if something annoyed us and we tried to write funnily about it, it was never funny. We had to sort of wait till the emotions had subsided and we could be a little bit more open-minded about it. Then it became funny.
Of all the vices which conspire to blind the mind of man's erring judgment and misguide the mind, what the weak head with strongest bias rules is pride, the never-failing vice of fools. You think this cruel? Take it for a rule. No creature smarts so little as a fool.
Yes, his theme of pride and ignorance is very impressive, really. I mean, it takes care of a lot of things. I mean, the terrible thing about social media is there's so many completely ignorant people expressing their opinions with great confidence.
A simple way of putting it is, pride is a bit like taking a selfie. You know, it's so easy to do, and it gives you that little surge of self-approbation. I exist, and look at me, and I do look good in my latest garment, you know, from whichever shop. But nobody else would want to watch it. Nobody else gets anything from it.
Satire's my weapon, but I'm too discreet. to run amok and tilt at all I meet.
He made a great thing of his friendship with Jonathan Swift and so on. So he was a true friend, but a terrible enemy, because once you failed by all his criteria, he really, really enjoyed making an example of you.
The only sign I had that my writings ever did any good has been that it raised the anger of bad men. My greatest comfort and encouragement to proceed has been to see that those who know no shame have appeared to be touched by my satires. Yes, I am proud, I must be proud to see men not afraid of God, afraid of me.
The crooked publisher Edmund Curll not only insulted Pope, but printed stolen poems and letters, and even printed forged poems. Pope took the extraordinary step of exacting physical revenge by placing a dangerous emetic in Curll's drink, causing vomiting. Then Pope delighted in satirising the incident in print.
Sir, I admit your general rule that every poet is a fool. Yet yourself shall serve to show it, that every fool is not a poet.
And they got back at him through publishing because you could produce absolutely scurrilous pamphlets, the way tweets now, can be sent instantaneously. A pamphlet could be published the next day, and the pamphlet wars against Pope, it exploited his physical disabilities and caricatured him as everything, a toad, a spider, a monkey.
Pope now wrote the Dunciad, perhaps the greatest satirical poem ever written in English. He selected the worst of the personal insults and dreadful blunders made by his foes, and in his satirical jibes he named the writers, delighting in exposing their ignorance, laziness and stupidity, which he labelled dullness.
I know too well the vast difference twixt those who deserve the name of poets and men of wit and those who dissemble. I keep pictures of Dryden, Milton and Shakespeare round about me, that the constant remembrance of them may keep me always humble.
Bad writing, he insisted, was a crime akin to poisoning the public wells.
Dullness returns the world to first chaos. If in the beginning was the word, it is equally true that the reduction of the word to meaninglessness is the end of the world as we know it.
Pope used to take measures to defend himself. I mean, he was actually attacked physically in the same way that Voltaire was to be attacked some years later. They met, and Voltaire said that Pope was the most brilliant man he'd ever met. But as a result of the hacks and their scurrilous attacks, he used to get physically attacked on walks. So he had a Great Dane, and he used to take pistols with him on his morning stroll.
Pope showed his courage in speaking out. He even invented the first English satire on celebrity chefs and fad diets.
What some call health, purchased by perpetual anxiety about diet, isn't much better than tedious disease. General satire in times of general vice has no force and is no punishment. People ceased to be ashamed of it when so many abound them, and it is only by hunting one or two from the herd that any examples can be made.
Let me see. There's Oh, there's some vile stuff in Pope.
Pope spoke out in a way that was very dangerous, but I think it was to do with the fact that George I was the first English king who didn't actually speak English.
He's almost more like the sort of level vitriol that you find on Twitter than in print these days, I think.
The right divine of kings to reign. Wrong. Dunce II reigns like Dunce I. A brain of feathers and a heart of lead.
He is the moral poet of all civilization. And as such, let us hope that he will one day be the national poet of mankind.
The great objection of Pope and his contemporaries to the politics of his day was that everybody was being treated by Walpole, the Prime Minister, as if they were for sale. It was the great age of corruption.
Where I could, I would make a protest against that insuperable corruption and depravity of manners that I have been so unhappy as to live to see.
That, along with the galloping use of cheap print media and party politics, had produced what Pope's friends thought of as a collapse in the political standards and culture. And in some ways, you could say that the internet has accelerated us into a similar predicament where tails are wagging dogs and the commercialization of attention has meant that the political sphere has become a branch of advertising.
For to say truth, whatsoever is very good sense must have been common sense at all times, and what we call learning is but the knowledge of our predecessors.
For Pope, part of satire was being very rude about people in almost a spitting image type of way. I think that Pope was also very keen to suggest ways in which the world could be improved.
This quotation by Pope was used to ridicule the judiciary who had sentenced Mick Jagger to imprisonment on a minor trumped-up charge. As a result of this article and others, there was a public outcry, and the Stones were subsequently acquitted.
I'm now writing a book to make mankind look upon this life with comfort and pleasure, and put morality in good humour. While we do live, we must make the best of life.
In his great poem, An Essay on Man, he works out a philosophy which transcends and connects all religions, which he had to approach with great tact.
I could not have said what I would have said without provoking every church on the face of the earth, and I did not care for living always in boiling water.
All are but part of one stupendous whole, whose body nature is, and God the soul. Pope's mind in this essay is active, ambitious, and adventurous, always investigating, always aspiring, in its widest searches still longing to go forward, in its highest flights still wanting to be higher, always imagining something greater than it knows, always endeavouring to do more than it can do.
I suppose the heart of it is in the title, Essay on Man. And, it includes the line, presume not God to scan. We're not divine, but we're not animals. how strange is that? We'd like to be angelic or godlike. The harder we try, the worse we are. We are the glory, jest, and riddle of the world. We're wonderful, we're ludicrous, we're a big puzzle. And so it swept Europe, this poem, because it was so intelligible, and it was translated into 20 languages. Zillions of editions in his lifetime.
Vast chain of being which from God began, nature's ethereal, human, angel, man, beast, bird, fish, insect, what no eye can see, no glass can reach, from infinite to thee, from nature's chain, whatever link you strike, 10th or 10,000th breaks the chain alike.
If any great national or natural convulsion could or should overwhelm the country, an Englishman, anxious that the posterity of strangers should know such a thing as a British epic and tragedy, might wish for the preservation of Shakespeare and Milton. But the surviving world would snatch Pope from the wreck and let the rest sink with the people.
Two principles reigned in human life: self-love and reason.
Voltaire came to England and just marvelled at our institutions, and he marvelled at the stock exchange, but he also marvelled at Pope. He went to visit Pope and was just stunned. And then he was even more stunned to visit great men's houses and find a bust of Pope in their libraries. So this was something unthinkable in France, that a poet could make himself totally central to a culture by proper means, just, publishing and being needed.
In 1744, Pope's health took a turn for the worse.
This long disease, my life.
Pope believed that living and dying required both good humour and kindness. He bequeathed his estate to Martha Blount, giving her, as an unmarried woman, her independence. Alexander Pope died in May 1744. He was buried in St Mary's Protestant Church, Twickenham, as he wished.
As a poet in the mock heroic and ethical, none equal him. The latter is the highest of all poetry, because it does that in verse which the greatest of men have wished to accomplish in prose. He who can reconcile poetry with truth and wisdom is the only true poet in its real sense. The maker, the creator.
The morning after my exit, the sun will rise as bright as ever. The flowers will smell as sweet. The plants spring as green. The world will proceed in its old course.
Fools rush in where angels fear to tread.
Fools rush in where angels fear to tread. Fools rush in